Welcome to another episode of the Myrie Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Myrie, and we're already in week 5 in college football. Unreal. It's flying by as it always does. And now that we're in conference play, you know what time it is. It's going to be Alabama, Georgia this week, the showdown. And you knew this going into this season, this was going to be a huge game. And obviously, with both teams ranked in the top 5, it's going to be a good one. And this year Alabama gets to host. You're looking at a primetime ABC game with this one, 7 Eastern, I believe. And going into it, I really don't think either team has been tested yet. Each team has played I would say, a formidable opponent in Georgia in the opening week against Clemson, and then Alabama obviously played Wisconsin on the road. But you clearly didn't get a test out of that. I mean, the first game I really thought Georgia would come out and impose their will against Clemson. I just thought that was a mismatch. I thought Clemson had too many unknowns, and Georgia right now, it was coming into the season, they're pissed off. They felt like they should have been in the playoff last year and got left out. So I just thought Georgia would come into the season with a chip on their shoulder. Now they had a little difficulty against Kentucky. I thought it would go the other way, but Kirby Smart always has one of these games, it seems like every year, where Georgia is just not firing on all cylinders like we expect they should, and beat every team by 40. So that's just the reputation you build up with Georgia over the past few years and what they've been able to do. So going into this game, I don't think the road atmosphere in Alabama is really going to affect them too much. This team has many guys on this team and the coaching staff. They've been in championship games. They played Alabama. They've been in hostile environments on the road. I don't think that's going to affect them. Now, with their quarterback being a little bit shaky against Kentucky, there may be some concerns about that. But there's just too much talent on this team. It's too well coached. And you know that they've been in practicing against, what it's going to be like in Alabama. But they've been telling these guys, you got to wake up. This is conference play. You know what you're supposed to do. So trust me, they've been fixing whatever happened in Kentucky. They'll be ready to play in Tuscaloosa. So at the line with this game, Georgia's favored by 2. It's been there's been movement on it, and I think that's a pretty good spot for it. And you got the over under 48.5. Now, Georgia's offense is averaging about 406 yards a game, and they're giving up about 228. So the defense just outside of the top 10. They were going to be good. They're going to keep reloading the way they have been. So I look for the defense to continue that. I think this game, it's going to go back and forth, but I tend to lean under 48.5. I could see a 24-21 type game between the two teams. But you just never know with these games. Like I didn't think the Kentucky game, I thought Georgia would blow them out. I didn't see the 13-12 game happening where it was just an offensive struggle. But the thing about it is, typically with these high-scoring games, coming out of the gate, you usually see a lot of points. It's very rare that they're just going to start putting them up. You can pretty much tell after about a quarter and a half the flow of the game, how it's going, if it's going to be a defensive struggle or if it's going to be a shootout. With this game, I think you're going to see a few turnovers. But I don't think it's going to be one extreme or the other. I don't think it's going to be too high or too low. I really do think both teams are going to be locked in. I think it's going to go back and forth. I think the defenses are going to step up. And so anyways, and then on the other side, you got Alabama. They're a little bit better offensively. They're just outside of the top 20. And then defensively, they're a little bit they're in the top 30. So they're on paper, it looks as though Georgia has the better defense, but Alabama is playing a little bit better offensively. And I think one of the key players for Alabama is their freshman sensation, who obviously everyone knows about, Ryan Williams. He's an X factor, and Georgia's really going to have to watch him because he looked really well against a better opponent, Wisconsin, and Alabama ended up blowing him out in that game. So I think he's going to be one to watch for an explosive play. Milroe's going to be trying to target him, and so defensively it'll be interesting to see what Georgia's going to be able to do with that situation. And then on the other side, defensively for Alabama, obviously you want to get to the quarterback, you want to get to Carson Beck, rattling like Kentucky did. That's going to be the key to the game there. Now, this game, like I said, Georgia's favored right now too, and the total being 48.5. So my prediction for this game, I'm going to lean Alabama, even though I don't think the home crowd is going to make too much of an impact. I think it's going to be big for Alabama. I don't think it's going to rattle Georgia. I think whoever wins this game is going to win because they played the better game. I think the talent's pretty even with these two teams. So it just comes down to executing. It comes down to limiting turnovers and making the big plays. And so far, what I've seen with Alabama having Ryan Williams, I really do think, even though he's a freshman and he's still really young, I just think that's going to be an X factor. I don't see anyone on Georgia's side that just overwhelms me. I don't think they've got good players, but I haven't seen someone just break out. And so that's part of the reason why I would lean Alabama. And I think Alabama's defense is going to be up for the challenge. I think they're going to put pressure on Carson Beck early. And I think Alabama is just a better team right now, even though they're close. I think Alabama's a better team. And getting this game at home, I think that might make a difference there. But it won't be the ultimate reason why they win. So we're going to go Alabama 24-21. So if you're looking at this from a betting standpoint, I would take Alabama. I would take them +2. That's probably my favorite bet. And I think the total is close. I'm taking 24-21, but I could see this game going over 50. I could see it being 27-24. I think it's going to be in that range, though. I think you're going to have your classic college football game. Going to be one of those type scores. So in this first game, the big showdown game of the week, we're going with Alabama. Okay, so we got a couple more games we're going to go over. Now, it's a pretty good slate this week. A lot better than the last couple of weeks, even though we had a couple pretty good games last week. In the second game, we're going to go now the first game I just talked about, it's going to be the night game. It's a 7:30 Eastern game on ABC. It's the biggest game of the week. So this next game, we're going to go Auburn, Oklahoma. This is going to be the 3:30 game coming on before. And so last time these two teams met, this was at a bowl game. Oklahoma won 35-19. And this was a year Auburn beat Alabama and Georgia, lost to Georgia in the SEC championship game. And you had Alabama and Georgia ended up facing off in the national championship. And, right now with Auburn, there's just a lot of unknowns. I think what Hugh Freeze is doing, recruiting-wise, is great. He's in the top 5. You couldn't ask for any better. I mean, given Auburn's history, they've only finished in the top 10, I want to say, maybe 2 or 3 times since these recruiting rankings started. And so that's the one thing that makes you pause, because a lot of things you're seeing on the field right now are just kind of a head-scratcher when you're coming into the season, bringing back a quarterback who really struggled in the last part of the season. But a lot of it doesn't make sense. He had what you would call a good game against Alabama, against excellent talent. And then he struggles against a team like Maryland in a bowl game. And then the week before with New Mexico State. So in this season, you're starting off, and then you have all the turnovers against Cal, and he's doing some of the same things he did last year. But you can't put it all on the quarterback. There's a lot that goes into that. And I think with Auburn, given your personnel, if anybody is running a team, if they're a head coach, you have to work with what you got. Now, you're trying to bring in the best players. You're trying to bring in the best recruits. But that takes time. With a project like Auburn coming into it, where they've been struggling the last few years, hardly putting together a recruiting class. And so there's just a lot of talent that you have to build up and develop. And it takes at least 3 seasons to do that, And even with the NIL and the portal, a lot of people mistake that. A lot of people think that they can just bring in talent through the portal and they're going to fix everything. But if you really look at this thing honestly, you're getting guys that didn't work out at other programs. Doesn't make them going to be the right fit at your program. I mean, it's really a gamble. It's a huge gamble because you don't know if the guys. He could be an okay talent. He's not great talent. Most of the great talent, I would say, are staying where they're at. So you might get guys that are on a lower tier, and then you have to figure out if they're going to be a good fit. Because even if they're a good fit, they might not be good talent. So it's really a huge gamble, and I wouldn't count on that. You really still have to build your team through the high school recruiting cycle, and you have to. That's what he's doing. He's put an emphasis on it. So with what's going on right now on the field, you just have a lot of guys that aren't as talented as what the expectation at Auburn is, and you're seeing a quarterback. He started his career at Michigan State, and he was an average quarterback. Just like I said, with the portal, you're getting average players. You might not get great players because most of those great players they're either staying at the university they're at or they're going pro. So if you get a guy like that with average talent, he's really got to be the right fit. And I don't know if necessarily Thorne is the right fit. And I don't know if they can utilize his skills of what they have, because the scheme this year has really been going for the home run, going for the big pass play. When really, if you're looking at it, I truly believe the strengths of the running game, the running backs you have returning. Jacquez Hunter, senior, been in the system. Thorne is a better runner than he is a passer. And then you have Damari Alston, another running back. And then you have Jeremiah Cobb. So you've got 3 stout running backs. You've got a quarterback that's in my opinion, he's more of a run-first quarterback. He might not have elite speed, but he's very elusive. Just look at the Alabama and Georgia games from last year. That's where he was most effective, and that's what caused Auburn to be in those games. Now, this year, when they went up against Cal, they had him he was basically, it's a lot of RPOs, but they're throwing. It looks like Auburn's throwing 60-70% of the time when they should be running 60-70% of the time, because he just can't throw the ball. He's not very accurate. He's not he doesn't make quick decisions in the pocket, and that's a recipe for disaster. And a team like Cal, with enough film on him from last year, they're looking at it, and the way they play defensively, they cause a lot of turnovers. And to me, like I said, Freeze has got to work with the personnel he has and figure out their strengths. Now, it won't always be that way, but until he can get those players in, he's got to utilize what he has. And I think he's just trying to force his system on the players that can't run it effectively. So that's what you're seeing right now. Now, going into this game, Oklahoma hasn't looked great either. They started a freshman at quarterback, Jackson Arnold. They got through the first 3 games, but really can't put too much into that because it wasn't a formidable opponent. But the offense really didn't look great. It was shaky. Now, you're going to have that with starting a freshman at quarterback. He's not going to come in and light it up. It just takes time. You got to take your lumps. But that's part of the problem now. In today's world, they're just expecting it. Everybody's expecting, just like with the NFL, if you're a rookie coming in there, you got to be, instant gratification. It's got to happen right now. They got to be good. And so with these, typically with freshman quarterbacks in college, especially, I mean it takes time, and most guys don't even get that start, And now what you're seeing, they had a quarterback change through that Tennessee game, and it was kind of an ugly game. Tennessee looked like the better team. They're playing a lot better, and Oklahoma was really never in that game. I mean, the final score was a lot closer. So, but here's the thing. Two shaky offenses. Auburn's defense has looked good at times, and they've looked really bad. So that's another thing. I think Auburn's the defensive coordinator for Auburn, he's trying to run his scheme, and it's just not very effective because he doesn't have the players yet to run it. So he's trying to force it, and so it looks good at times and it looks bad. So with this, you're looking at the other side of the coin. I think out of both offense, both defenses, I think Oklahoma has the best defense. Obviously, I think that's the biggest strength on either side of the ball for either team. I think Oklahoma's defense is going to be a huge factor because this is a really bad matchup for Auburn when they're at the top of the leaderboard in turnovers, right? And Oklahoma's forcing a lot. This is a Venables defense, so he's always tried to create turnovers. He's got a really stout defense, and it just seems like a recipe for disaster. Even though Auburn's playing at home, that hasn't mattered in the Hugh Freeze era. Auburn's looked awful at home, and look at the last three losses now against Arkansas, Cal, and New Mexico State, all at home. Which obviously Auburn has more talent. They should win those games. So we're looking at the line here, and I think it's generous. I mean, Oklahoma's only 2.5-point favorite on the road, but they're the superior team defensively. So you're looking at this. Unless we see something different, unless Freeze changes up his scheme, I think it's going to go the way the other two games go. I think it'll be relatively lower scoring. You're not going to see a lot of points, especially with these two offenses. I think Oklahoma is going to cause some turnovers. I mean, if you just look at the stats, Auburn's going to turn the ball over. I don't think it changes in a week. And you're going against a defense that is its specialty is causing turnovers. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But just looking at it, Oklahoma 2.5-point favorite, over under 45.5. I really like Oklahoma 2.5. I think they're going to win by more than that, maybe 7. So with this, I'm going to say it's going to be, I think Oklahoma puts up 24, Auburn 13. I think Oklahoma wins 24-13. I think it's going to be a kind of an ugly game. It'll go back and forth, but there won't be a lot of points scored. I think it's going to be a very ugly game, and there'll be some turnovers for Auburn. So we're going to go with a spread here. Oklahoma minus 2.5. Final score 24-13. So lastly, the final game we're going to talk about, and going through this is I'm just trying to figure out I want to play the biggest games, but I'm also looking, what's going to, betting wise, what's going to be good, what's going to work. So in this last game we're going to talk about, I'm going to go with another 3:30 game. I'm going with a Wisconsin-USC game. I've got to watch these two teams with Wisconsin playing in Alabama and USC being in a really couple spotlight games early on, playing LSU first game of the year, and then last week playing Michigan. Now, they're coming back home, so Wisconsin's flying across the country. And this is going to be interesting. I believe it's, yes. So, Wisconsin's quarterback's out for the year. Alabama game for early on. It's an ACL tear. That's really damaging for Wisconsin. And they're back up. He didn't really impress me that much. I don't think he did anything too bad, but I just don't see him coming in and lighting it up. With the way Wisconsin moves the ball, it's going to be very methodical. Now, offensively, USC is 35th in the country in total yards. Wisconsin's 149th. So there's a big difference there offensively. And USC likes to pass the ball. They're 14th, and Wisconsin's 184. So this is just a big offensive mismatch. Also, USC's putting up 33 points a game. Wisconsin's putting up 21. So just from an offensive standpoint, big mismatch. Now defensively, they're pretty much relatively even. Wisconsin giving up 314 yards a game, USC 318. And even through even passing and rushing are almost the same. Wisconsin's 52nd, USC's 43rd. Rushing yards, 165th for USC, 182 for Wisconsin. So these teams are pretty evenly matched on defense. So if you're just looking at it from a statistical standpoint, USC should have the advantage because they're much better offensively, and they're playing at home. Even though their home crowd, there may be more Wisconsin fans there. They travel very well. I mean, there'll be a good amount of Wisconsin fans there, but I still think is when I see these two teams line up and who USC's played, I think USC's more battle tested. Even though Wisconsin did play Alabama, they were never in the game. USC beat LSU and were in the Michigan game. Came down to the wire. So I like USC here. Now, USC spread is 15.5. The over-under is 50.5. That's tricky. That 15.5, that's a lot of points. Because you're talking about more than 2 touchdowns. So USC's really going to have to come out offensively and light it up. So even though I do like USC to win the game, I'm thinking I'm liking the Wisconsin plus 15.5. I think with their style of play, they're going to try to eat up clock. They're going to do time of possession because that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to establish a run and keep their defense off the field and just eat up clock. So I think they could try to make it ugly. I don't know if USC's – they've got a good offense. I don't know if they're explosive enough to open this game up. So I like that 15.5. And the over-under is kind of tricky as well because you're asking